Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. I'm going to have a good show for you guys. We're going to go over the markets, and then I'm going to talk about the single most dangerous thing that threatens our existence as a human race. And it's not what you guys think, but I'll leave that to the end,
right
toward
here,
the end of the show.
and
let's take a look.
So
let's get started. Let's open up. First thing that's going on is what's going on with silver. Silver's down a penny today, and it's found a new range in around 1525. I think that we could be looking at, there's two forces that are coming into play right now. One is deflation, the other one's inflation. And, these two forces are at war with one another. Why the deflation is even there is because we've had the longest credit expansion in the history of the earth. They've over-leveraged the system. And with a credit expansion, what happens is credit tends to try to contract. And when credit contracts, it creates deflation. But we have the other force, inflation, on the other side of this, which is the creation of money. Massive creations of money. An awful lot of this money has been sidelined, and there's a lot of money in play. And this money creates inflation. So we have these two forces fighting against one another. And, this market's been held suppressed for a long time, the silver market. Seriously, folks, take a look at the fundamentals in silver. You can't go wrong when you can take into consideration the fundamentals. So let's take a look now at gold. Gold is drifting downwards a little bit. This is a little bit unusual because the dollar's not been showing strength today. But gold's drifting downwards $1.80 in price. Not a big move. Not a big move in gold. Let's take a look at Bitcoin today. Now, Bitcoin has underwent a price correction in the last day or so. And it's fell down from $13,000, over $13,000. And let me just see which way it's moving right now. It's 11,895 right there. Let me refresh the page. 11,894. It's not moving much at all. Because that was about 5 or 10 minutes ago I refreshed the page, and it's only moved like $1. That's nothing for Bitcoin. Bitcoin's almost stopped right now. It's basically consolidating until its next move, which is probably going to be up. Probably, I say. I'm not saying 100% sure that that's the direction, but that's the direction I think it's going to move next. And it might take a few days to consolidate, or it might start moving in a very short period of time, again, upwards. Let's take a look now at cryptocurrency market capitalizations. We're looking at $334.1 billion with a Bitcoin dominance of 62.8%. And what we're seeing here in most of the coins is that price correction reflected in what's going on with most of these coins today. But Litecoin in particular, I want to point out that Litecoin's taken an awful beating in price, and Litecoin was undervalued to begin with. It's still only $118 for a whole Litecoin. Incredible value in a coin as far as I'm concerned, because I like Litecoin. That's one of my favorite coins. Litecoin and Bitcoin. Those are the two I like. But, everybody has their favorite coins here. And there's a lot to pick from. Just on coin market cap alone, I think they got like 1,000 or something coins, So now let's take a look at the Dow Jones for today. Let me refresh the page. It's up 15 points on the day. Well, 14 points on the day so far. The Dow is caught in this whole thing too, of being able to fall over because of deflation or rise because of inflation, and that's why the Dow right now is at an inflection point where it's kind of like not knowing which direction it really wants to move in. Let's take a look now at the oil price, and the oil price is staying strong, just under $60, $59.46 today. It's up 3 cents on the day, which is almost no movement in oil. It's almost like right now what we're having is almost like a calm before the storm. Quite seriously. A calm before the financial storm right now. Let's take a look at U.S. Treasuries. Because, I think we're already in a recession, guys. To tell you the truth. I think we've been in it for several months. But it's not going to be officially declared for another 6 months or more. Because we have to have 2 negative quarters of GDP growth. We're seeing the short end of the yield curve here rising a little bit. Rising marginally. But the long end of the yield curve is rising. I see a little turnaround. These bonds are not moving, the bond yields are not falling quite so fast, and we're seeing more upward movement. I'm seeing starting to see a little bit of a turnaround in U.S. Treasuries. Now let's take a look at the U.S. dollar index. The dollar is almost down into the 95s. It's 96.09. It's down 0.1% today, down. It's getting down near 95s. Now you remember it was riding up at 98s. So we've been getting some movement down in the dollar lately. A little bit of weakness. When you consider what the dollar's being paired against, or compared to, I mean, if the dollar was compared to gold. Anyway, let's take a look at this, what's going on here in Europe right now. They've got a terrible heat wave in Europe. If it gets any worse, already it's bad enough where people are going to start perishing in this. The old, the weak, the sick, the elderly, especially if they don't have air conditioning. Quite literally, look at these temperatures. They're over 40 degrees Celsius, as high as 44 degrees Celsius. All in through France, through Spain, through Italy, Portugal, all in up and around Italy. It's just, it's just a huge blob of hot air over Europe right now. Intensely hot air. I would say that if you live in these countries in Europe, to beware of this heat. I mean, make sure you drink a lot of fluids, and not just a matter of drinking a lot of water. I'm going to tell you guys. Because you can lose body salt if you're just drinking, especially if you're drinking too much water. You can lose body salt. And this can bring on electrolyte imbalances. Your body is actually an electrical system. Most people don't know this. Your body's an electrical system. And electrolytes, the salt that's in your body, the body salts, these contain electrolytes, which enable your body to send electrical currents that run things like your heart and your lungs, especially your heart is especially vulnerable to electrolyte imbalances. You can go into heart arrhythmias and everything else, where your heart can start to beat not in the correct fashion. If in heat like this super high heat, you have to maintain these bodily fluids to maintain your electrolyte balance. And so you don't want to, actually a bad thing is to drink too much water, because it can flush the electrolytes out of your system, especially through sweat or whatever. You have to replenish these supplies of electrolytes with body salts. So Gatorade's actually good stuff. In a heat spell. It's better than drinking just raw water because of the electrolytes that supplies your body, especially if you're sweating a lot, That's what they made these drinks for. These drinks, there's quite a few different brands, not just Gatorade. I think Gatorade was one of the first brands of these drinks. But anyway, you have to try to stay in a cool place and stuff, especially if you're in these countries. Now remember I said that I was going to point out the biggest danger to planet Earth of all. A danger to our species. I knew it was a danger all along. For the last probably 20 years I've known it was a danger to our species. But I didn't realize what a danger it was until I heard from information, I think from NASA yesterday, that there's actually a 1.2% chance every year of this thing happening that would basically wipe out our species. Now, if you went back 200 years ago, and we had this event happen that NASA's worried about, it wouldn't have no effect on us at all. But now, it would basically wipe out our species, because we've made ourselves vulnerable to it. I'm going to tell you exactly what it is. It's our sun. So our sun, every once in a while, what happens is, you get a spot on our sun that's called a sunspot. And basically what it is, it's like a giant island of where the sun is actually cooling a little bit, and it's forming a little bit of a crust. And it forms like a floating island on a sea of lava. That's the sun. That's the sea of lava. And that makes a dark spot on the sun. Well, pressure builds up underneath that. It's called a sunspot. Pressure builds up underneath that spot because that cooling that makes like a big island, a giant island. Sometimes it might be a sunspot might be the size of practically the size of the Earth. You're picturing a cool spot where it's forming a crust. Pressure builds up underneath that. And it makes like a giant volcano. The same thing. It's a volcano on Earth, except this is much bigger, and the crust is much thinner, and it blows. And it ejects that material off into space. It's called a solar flare, you know. And so when you get a really huge solar flare, I mean a mega-sized one, it fires off into space like a bullet. And it heads out away from the sun out into space. Now, if the Earth isn't in the right spot, it just harmlessly whizzes on by the Earth. But if the Earth is exactly in the right spot at the wrong time, and this thing fires one of these solar flares, and the solar flare actually hits the Earth, bam, we get hit. And the sun fires these bullets all the time. Now, back in the 1800s, it was noticed in the United States, they had a system that was like today's internet. It's called a telegraph system. And it's how we used to send messages. You go into a telegraph office and you'd pay them so much money, you know, back in those days probably a silver coin, and then they would send your message clear across the United States or Canada or wherever, you know. And they get it almost instantaneously because they had telegraph lines and telegraph poles, similar to our poles where we carry electricity today. You know, they had poles set up and an electric line strung across them. Well, you know, this event was called the Carrington event, and what it basically was one of these solar flares that the sun spews out. Instead of whizzing by the Earth, it hit the Earth, bam, back in the 1800s. And what they noticed was there was electricity coming through the telegraph wires, and it was actually melting the cables and stuff, and it actually electrified some of the telegraph operators that were touching the cables. They go, ugh! You know, it shocked them really bad. There was electricity coming through the telegraph cables, massive amounts of electricity. It was melting the wires, melting the covering off of the wires. The coating off of the wires, the sparks flying off of it and everything. Now, if we had that event today, the exact same thing, what would it do? It would, well, basically what would happen is you wouldn't feel nothing. Nothing. Just all of a sudden, everything would go dead. Your computer would go dead. Your electricity would go out for your house. And you wouldn't know what it is. You just think it's a normal power outage. Like people, we always have power outages every once in a while. You just think it's a power outage. But you'd say, well, my internet's dead. The sun's shining today, you know, and you wouldn't feel nothing. There's nothing wrong. And you wouldn't know what's going on. It's just everything would be dead. But it wouldn't just be dead in your neighborhood. You'd think it's a local outage, and you would go and you would try phoning up the power company, and nothing. It wouldn't even be a dial tone on the phone. Everything would be dead. You go over to switch on your TV, and it wouldn't work. You go out to get in your car, to start your car, nothing. Not even the battery, dead battery. And you'd start to scratch your head and say, this is weird. This is really weird, because my car won't even start. And everybody would be wandering around their houses in your neighborhood. You'd go outside and you look at your neighbors, and they'd be wandering around their houses, wondering the same thing about you that you're wondering. and they would be getting in trying to start their cars, and they would be trying to go on their laptops or go onto their cell phones, and their cell phone screen won't come on. You know, they push the buttons. And everybody would be talking to one another, and everything would just basically come to a stop except for the people. The people would be wondering what's going on. They'd be gathering in community centers and stuff, trying to talk, trying to find out what's going on, get information. And nobody would have any information. And this would be the whole world, though, would be under this. Well, as the days would pass, the power won't come back on. Ever. Your electronic equipment won't work. And you can't even repair it because you won't even be able to get parts. You won't be able to get gasoline, nothing. Everything would just come to a complete stop and halt. But it gets worse. Because what would continue to work in the whole world would be the nuclear power plants. Actually, I shouldn't actually say that. Most of the power plant wouldn't be functioning. The control place where they control all the switches and everything to keep the reactor from overheating, that would be all fried and that wouldn't work. So basically the guys would, if they could get into the power plant that worked there, they might have to take a bicycle to get in there, but say they did get in, go inside where they normally go and control everything, control the switches and everything, those terminals would all be dead, and the reactors would be starting to overheat worldwide on every worldwide power plant. And this is why I say that if you were to go back in time when the Carrington event happened, it went almost unnoticed back in the 1800s because of the way we were set up. But now everything's different. We've set ourselves into a world where if we don't have power, we don't exist, basically. It's that bad. Because even the people who can support themselves and have moved off-grid, and they might have solar power, and they might produce all their own food and have chickens and everything else, they would be affected as well when all of these nuclear power plants basically melt down worldwide. So what we've done is we've created a trap for ourselves with our modern conveniences, our modern technology, our modern way of life that is making us vulnerable, completely vulnerable to the sun and its solar flares. Now, I got information from NASA. They said that over the next 10 years, there's a 12% chance of us getting a solar flare of that magnitude that would hit the Earth and knock out our power grids. 12% chance. I think they said 12.5% chance, if I remember right, if memory serves me right. Don't hold me to that, guys. But I think that's what the numbers was, 12.5%. Now, breaking that down yearly, that would be a 1.2% chance every year. I think they said that the event occurs roughly every 100 years. We get one of these. The last one was the Carrington event. This, in my mind, moves this to being the most dangerous, figuring in the odds, this is more dangerous than the Cold War. This is more dangerous than Yellowstone volcano. This is more the odds are higher. This is more dangerous than a giant rock from space hitting the Earth. This is more dangerous even than a meltdown of our financial system. What we need to do on this Earth, we know this danger exists. We know it's a very high danger because it occurs like every 100 years. We need to start ensuring our infrastructure against using I don't know how they would exactly do it. I'm not a technician on this, but I do know there is a thing called a Faraday cage that that will shield, and there is types of shielding that can shield electrical from the sun and these solar flares. We need to start shielding our infrastructure worldwide, so that at least parts of our grid will stay on if we get this kind of a thing actually happen. So listen, I wanted to bring this to you guys' attention. There's great danger to the Earth. And listen, thank you guys for listening to the show. Give me a thumbs up. And you know, these heat waves that we're having can be dangerous too, and they could actually get worse. Seems like it's some new type of phenomenon, like a dome of heat, a traveling dome of heat, and where it'll travel to next, who knows? But it could be very serious, because if they're approaching the temperatures at 40 to 44 degrees Celsius, they're approaching the temperatures where if this index starts to get a little bit warmer than that, if it moves up another 5 degrees Celsius warmer than that, it's almost like something very dangerous. Anyway, listen, thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you guys in the next show. Bye-bye.